idea. So how do you keep that feeling of, oh, this is new or fresh or interesting when there's such a high saturation of ideas?
Yeah, I mean, what I've done is just try different things. Like we just brought on our first cohort in January, and it's 35 new people. They're joining at the same time, and I treated it almost like they were, joining a college or like a new semester. Like I assigned people roommates that like had their back that they connect with every month. We had a move-in day where everybody posted on the Slack their intros, and everybody kind of like commented on that. And so I think bringing in new people and new energy is really invigorating, not just to the new people, but to the older people.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human, because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Brian Von Ancken. Brian is a health and wellness entrepreneur who created the Wellness Growth Mastermind, a community of wellness leaders dedicated to business and personal growth. He previously founded the Mindful Social Workout Anchor and has helped scale brands like Tough Mudder, Berries, and Othership as an executive. His mantra is know thyself and have fun. Congrats on Anchor and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you. Really great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show because there's a growing trend with businesses that they've kind of realized that they need to build more community around their brands. They need to actually engage with people and help retain them as customers or clients and move beyond the transactional, because that's so easy to do now, the transaction side, but it's a lot harder to build those communities and keep people loyal to a brand. So how do you work with companies? How do you help companies build community that actually lasts?
Yeah, so community-led growth is very underrated and really can go a long way for people. And let me just be clear, first of all, I don't necessarily help companies specifically. I build the community and give them advice and allow them to flourish. But I know a lot about building community because I've done it myself. I worked at iconic brands like Berries and Tough Mudder, and I know what it takes to get people to care about what you're building more than just in a transactional sense, and how much that pays dividends beyond just the transaction and the dollars that they bring in. I read somewhere recently, it was like, if somebody hears about you via word of mouth, it's like 20 times more likely to hit than if they hear about it via, a paid ad or something like that. And so I think the big thing that I would recommend for brands is that it's got to be authentic and you've got to play the long game. Kind of like, a lot of people when they do B2B sales, they realize like, hey, this is going to take a long time. I'm not necessarily going to get it overnight. There's sales cycles. It's similar to the true community customers that you get. I think you build trust. What we see a lot in wellness, specifically my industry, is there's a big education gap a lot of times when people are want to buy something or they're interacting with a new product, right? There could be a brand new device that helps you. We have a company in our group called Olo, and they're a lamp, but it's not just a lamp. It's a lamp that helps you breathe, and the lighting changes depending on your mood, and there's all these ways that you can interact with it. But people are not used to a lamp that can help your mental health. So there's an education gap. And so what happens in a lot of our companies, and I think a lot of other people can do too, is to just get people within your ecosystem in some way, whether it's via the paid ads or whether it's via social or whether it's via other ways to get at least an email, and then just to build that trust very slowly and to give them opportunities to see the real version of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think that as you build the trust, I've seen it be, if it's done well and it's done slowly and authentically, it can really grow over time. I'll share my own story as well briefly, which is that, I started this community by accident. I started it on the side. I basically met two people who were very smart, and I said, you two need to meet each other, but I want to listen to that conversation. And so I created a mastermind community, and I just ended up inviting more people slowly over time. It grew organically. I added way more value. And what ended up as just a monthly call has now turned into a flourishing community of over 200 members from big name brands like Aura and 8 Sleep and Peloton and Headspace, and a lot of up and coming brands too. And for my own community, it really has been slow growth, adding value, and trusting that brick by brick, you're going to build that trust so that people are in your corner.
And it definitely, it's very impressive how you went from kind of a single introduction, not intending to necessarily build a big community, but it formed organically because people really got the value from it, so they stuck around. And I think it's a stark contrast from the kind of the bubbles and the fast growth, and then it's suddenly like, and it falls all apart. You see a lot in startups lately where it's, they kind of scale and scale and scale as fast as possible, but there's no real foundation. So something shifts and it all, it's just not sustainable. And there's a big kind of like burst, and then there's a huge correction and all these disruptions and stuff. And it's, I think the way you go about building your community is a lot more sensible, because it's something that actually has staying power, because there's people have those connections and they have that reason to come back beyond the transaction. And it makes it a much more appealing environment for a lot of people, because there is that sense of like psychological safety and belonging and connection that as humans we need, but don't really get as much of in the modern world.
Yeah, and I completely agree, but I want to be very clear too. It's not easy. Nobody wants another Slack channel. Nobody wants another WhatsApp group. Nobody wants more emails. And so you need to be really intentional and really have low expectations when you're starting, so that you can, because getting people to show up to anything is hard. And the only way that you do that is by having them feel something and having them feel a part of something and feel connection, right? So, if it's a product and something that, even if you're building in real estate, if they care really deeply about real estate, maybe there's a fun way for you to add value to them, to make them, share some interesting tidbits about the market or whatever it might be, just to kind of make people feel like they're in and they're a part of something. And then they know that you're not asking for anything in return right now. I mean, obviously you can go a lot of different ways with it. Once they become customers, then you can bring them into like a secondary community. But if you can get evangelists, I mean, it's been demonstrated how amazingly powerful evangelists are and how cheap they are in their relative to just, going on paid ads and trying to acquire leads in that way.
So what was kind of the process that you took to build your community? Because you mentioned some different phases about that initial introduction and then finding evangelists. Kind of what was did you recognize phases or steps you went through to build this thing to where it is today?
Yeah, I think the first phase was just iterating and trying out new things. There's a great new sport of sorts called banana ball, which is like a riff on baseball, where this guy, he owned a minor league baseball team, or maybe it wasn't even minor leagues, it was like below that. And he just reinvented baseball and tried a bunch of new things. He has, if a fan catches a fly ball, it counts as an out. And if you do a trick play, you get an extra thing. People are doing like backflips and catching the ball, and they do all sorts of kooky things on a baseball field. And I feel like the founder of that is somebody who just really believes in trying new things and failing and having an open mind and getting feedback. And so what I started initially was, hey, let me start with a call at this time. Oh, that time doesn't work. Okay, let me try and do these things and have these guest speakers. Oh, that doesn't work. Let me do a breakout room. So I just always got feedback early on. And I made sure that feedback wasn't just a survey that I sent after an event. It was like, no, the last 3 to 5 minutes, I pre-populated a survey and I sent it to people so that they could give real-time feedback, got a much higher completion rate. And it just allowed for me to, and I truly made the changes that people suggested, so then people felt more invested. And so it's just getting that handful of people, listening to them, iterating from there. And then once you get to that point where, okay, we've got a critical mass, now having a, opportunity to empower people to take champions and owners of the community themselves, and how do they start to, take on a leadership role. And there's a great, there's a really couple great books on community out there that I swear by, that I'll link in the show notes. It's called Get Together. It's a book written by people who started at Instagram, Facebook, like some early big tech companies, but early days, and what it took to build community. And they have a really clear formula of like what it takes to build authentic community bit by bit.
Yeah, definitely send those to me so I can add them to the show notes. And I really like what you said earlier about that you get, the way you do your feedback is like in the moment, and you actually apply it, because it really does help build that sense of ownership for the members. Like they feel like they're having an impact on the group, and it's theirs, and not just a thing that they're subscribed to, but actually involved with. I can see how that would help turn a lot of them from standard users to like the evangelists, and wanting to advocate for it, because it is now part of how they define themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely know that the people who have been there from the beginning are the people who are gonna, like, similar. They're just out there. A really beautiful thing about my community right now is there's no I don't do any external marketing, or I don't do, everybody is inbound, everybody's referrals. And that's because people have great experiences and they tell their friends. And I don't have any fancy referral program or anything. People just know it's valuable, and they organically tell people that they know about it. And that's a reflection of how much I care about the product, and having an over delivering and having people feel like there is something really different and unique, which is, that's the other thing you really got to lean into for community. If it feels stale, if it feels like it's been done before, it's really, really hard for it to, have legs.
So what are some of the things you've done to keep it feeling fresh? And if that's because I can see how people think because it's been done so many times before by so many people that like they're, oh, isn't this another one of these? Or it's like this plus this, and they kind of, there's not like a new, fresh idea. So how do you keep that feeling of, oh, this is new or fresh or interesting when there's such a high saturation of ideas?
Yeah. I mean, what I've done is just try different things. Like we just brought on our first cohort in January, and it's 35 new people. They're joining at the same time. And I treated it almost like they were, joining a college or like a new semester. Like I assigned people roommates that like had their back, that they connect with every month. We had a move-in day where everybody posted on the Slack their intros, and everybody kind of like commented on that. And so I think bringing in new people and new energy is really invigorating, not just to the new people, but to the older people. And then I think I'm always somebody who is adding new value and trying new things. So I'll do retreats, we'll do in-person events, we'll do an impromptu sauna session. I'm just like always trying to keep my finger on the pulse of everybody in the group, which obviously I can only do to a certain scale. But I do think that with AI and with virtual assistants and stuff like that these days, a single person can do more than they used to be able to do. And so, if you have the right systems in place, you can actually do quite a lot. And it's just a matter of, making sure that you're still on top of what people need and surprising and delighting them even after they've been a part of the community for a couple of years.
Yeah, I like that what you said about the surprise and delight and keeping things fresh and interesting. It's like any relationship where if it becomes routine and expected, just the way our brains work is that it becomes less valuable because it becomes kind of like into the background noise. And so having a strategy for keeping things fresh and interesting, and like, and for every relationship, it's like having a date night, even though you've been married for 20 years, that kind of stuff where for you, I can see how having different like events, like the retreats and stuff makes sense because it keeps things interesting, and people don't know what to expect when they see like an alert, like here's a new event coming up. They don't go, oh, it's just another one of those, whatever. Like, ooh, I know it could be something exciting and different that I haven't experienced before, because they expect that you're coming up with these new things, and there's the expectation is for something that's going to be exciting, not the standard routine. And so I can see how that mindset has allowed you to keep growing. And I love what you mentioned about the making the new members feel special, having like a kind of ritual for introducing them to the group, because that also, there's the whole idea of that first impression is a lasting impression. And when they get first meeting to the group and everyone's like, wow, we're so glad you're here, they were so welcoming, there's that immediate relationship or connection and sense of belonging that so many people are craving and aren't getting from many places in their life. So that creates this psychological sense of, I've been looking for this for years and finally have like this place where I feel like I'm valued and connected. And that especially is a great way to get people to continue staying in the group and also share their experience. The other friends who probably are still craving that same experience and not getting it other places. So I can see how that approach and making it like school is kind of a fun twist, because there's some of the like nostalgia of when people went off to college and stuff that's also baked in there. So I think it's a very clever solution. I'm interested though, like how you mentioned that initial like introduction you made that kind of started this mastermind, but what was like the first next few steps to actually grow it from just 2 people to multiple? Because it often seems like it's those initial first steps that are the hardest, because there's so there's not already much momentum to get going. So how do you get that initial momentum growing?
Yeah, so I didn't charge a dime for 2 years. I just stayed consistent. People started to know me as these monthly calls. I made it very easy for when I naturally had conversations with people to say, oh, by the way, I've got this call if you want to join. And I made it valuable enough that people wanted to stay on the list. And so I made it very easy for people to join the calls. I made it very valuable for people when they did come. I followed up with them afterwards, and I just let it grow slowly. And it built enough trust so that when I wanted to start charging for things, there was a base that I could start doing that. And it allowed me to expand into a Slack community and events and all the other interesting things that I do. But yeah, it's very much in my experience. I know that it can be done differently, but what I was able to do was to build it slowly on the side for free, keep it fun, keep it interesting, and then, monetize from there.
And what was that switch like from free to monetization? Like, how did you go about that? Because I can imagine there'd be some like friction or attrition from that. What was your approach to that? Because that often seems like a potential like sticking point that could derail the entire thing if it's not handled properly.
Yeah, it was very scary. I didn't do it for a while just because I was scared to do it. But what I did was I offered a really great introductory price for people, a founding membership price. And I said, this is for people who want to join. And then I said to everybody else, I said, listen, I'm also happy to keep you on for the next 6 months, and I'm not going to charge you anything. But after 6 months, if you're still interested in keeping it free, then, we'll have a conversation. And so I didn't pressure people into a decision right away. I planted the seed, and then I made it clear that this founding membership is unique and that that's kind of an opportunity to lock in. And there's people who are locked in at a really good rate. And I'm going to respect that for, I don't know, probably a really long time, because they took the chance on me. And I was, really grateful for that.
Yeah, I like that approach of having like the 6 month thing and not like making it a force, like, okay, right away you have to choose now immediately, and pressure them into this kind of FOMO like really high intensity decision, because it often leads to like buyer's remorse, kind of a bad feeling, especially after how you built the community before. To kind of switch gears to be super high pressure sales would be, I feel like, a big bait and switch. So I like your approach there with the slower ease into it while still focusing on all the value you're adding. So if you're like, have one last tip for someone who's wanting to start a community, any kind of like initial, like a mindset shift you want to impart before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think I just really encourage people to take chances, to try things out, to not overthink, and to act. I mean, I really think I was served by, this is my second time founding something. And so my bias to action was really high. And so I didn't overly think too much about the logo or the website or the whatever, it was just about getting something out there, taking action, not overthinking it, and then trusting that I will learn over time, and not being afraid of failure, being excited to fail and learning from it. And to me, it's a hard mindset to just like switch on. But, for me, I listen to like a little morning mantra that I'm happy to share in the show notes. It's 2 minutes that I think is like a nice, the sentiment is essentially, you're the creator of your life. You can do things like, and just kind of little, very, very obvious things that people might think. But I think if you can start to remind yourself, especially your subconscious, that things are possible and that you have the ability to do it, and setting a goal for yourself, that's actually so important of a foundation to do any of this. Like, and none of the tips and tricks are going to work if you don't have that foundation to work from.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Brian. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a comment, and subscribe. If you want to check out any more information about myself or Brian, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.